How to Train Your Dragon. Finding a Black Dragon Egg from Monster Hunter. Chapter 81. The night was ink dark, shrouding Burke Island. Only the valley base of the investigation team still glowed with warm light. The wooden walls were covered with yellowed old nautical charts and dragon sketches. A bonfire crackled in the corner, and the flickering light projected the shadows of the three people and one dragon onto the wall, constantly shifting between bright and dim. Lin, Stoic, and Hiccup sat around a large wooden table. A parchment map was spread out on the table, crudely marking only Burke Island and a few surrounding small islands. The rest of the vast area was blank. Mira lay at Lin's feet, its black wings gently folded. Its golden dragon eyes glowed softly in the firelight. It did not interrupt the trio's conversation, merely accompanying them quietly, occasionally nudging Lin's pant leg with its snout, sending a thought. Master, what are you talking about? Owu. Lin lowered his head and patted its skull, signaling it to be patient. Look, Lin said, extending a finger and gently touching the blank space on the map, his fingertip tracing the rough parchment. This is the entire scope of what we currently know, centered on Burke Island, with a radius of no more than 30 kilometers. In the past, we could only explore slowly by wooden boat, constantly wary of dragon harassment. It was already difficult to map even this much. He paused, his gaze sweeping over Stoic and Hiccup, his tone full of anticipation, but now it's different. We have dragon partners who can fight alongside us, and we have the dragon riders who are about to be formed. Our exploration will no longer be confined to this small sea area. Hiccup leaned closer to the map, tracing the blank areas with his finger, his eyes sparkling. Are you saying we're going to explore beyond the map? More than just exploration. Lin looked up, his golden pupils shining astonishingly in the firelight. Beyond the map, there may be dragon species we have never seen, perhaps dragons that can control wind and rain, perhaps dragons that can dive into the deep sea, or perhaps even ancient dragons stronger than the Red Death. When the phrase, unknown dragons, was mentioned, a flash of excitement instantly crossed Hiccup's eyes, and the corners of his mouth unconsciously lifted. But when ancient dragons stronger than the Red Death were mentioned, he became serious and began contemplating something. Stoic frowned slightly, tapping the table gently with his finger, a serious expression on his face. Unknown tribes and kingdoms, that is what we need to be most wary of. We don't know their attitude toward dragons. Are they friends or foes? What is their strength? Will they pose a threat to Burke Island? Having experienced too much warfare, he knew that unpredictable risks might be hidden behind unknown groups. Lin took in both of their reactions and already had a meticulous plan. Therefore, we must proceed with a two-pronged approach. Hiccup. He turned to the expectant Hiccup. For the next 2 days, you will fully train the newly selected dragon riders, making sure they quickly become familiar with cooperating with their dragons and mastering basic combat and flying skills. After the training, you will lead the investigation team, riding Toothless and taking the team's partners, to set off, to explore the unknown sea areas, record the islands and coastlines along the way, and draw detailed nautical charts. If you encounter unknown dragons, try to observe and record them, and do not easily engage in conflict. If you encounter other tribes, report back to us first, then attempt communication to understand their situation. No problem. Hiccup slapped the table forcefully and stood up excitedly. Toothless seemed to sense his emotion, letting out a cheerful low growl outside the wooden house. I've wanted to see the world beyond the map for a long time. I guarantee the mission will be completed. Lin smiled and nodded, then turned to Stoic, his tone becoming respectful. Great Elder, I must entrust the construction of Burke Island to you. As the ley line energy surges, the island area continues to expand. We need to build a more spacious dragon lair beneath the tribe to give the dragons a better habitat. Furthermore, the rearing of herbivorous dragons is also very important. They not only provide stable ingredients but also require the protection of their dragon eggs. With your rich experience, you will certainly be able to lead the villagers in carrying out these tasks. Stoic pondered for a moment, then slowly nodded. Don't worry, I will arrange everything properly. It's just, what exactly is this ley line energy you speak of? He had only heard Lin mention it once before and had not delved into it. Ley line energy is natural energy hidden deep within the earth, Lin explained. Just like Toothless can spit out plasma blasts, the dragons of the investigation team are even stronger because they acquired new abilities by absorbing ley line energy. leyline energy is a similar natural force. It nourishes the earth, allowing plants to grow quickly, and also strengthens the dragon's power. Below the valley where we are now, there is a leyline energy eruption point. It is precisely because of its surge that the volcano island expands and the area of Burke Island slowly increases. The energy Mira needs to grow also comes from here. Stoic suddenly understood, his eyes full of shock. So that's it. No wonder the plants on the island have been growing so fast recently, and dragon eggs are easier to hatch. Exactly. Lin nodded. My next task is to conduct in-depth research on leyline energy. It's getting late, everyone should go back and prepare. Lin raised his hand and rubbed his brow. The warmth of the bonfire made the wooden house exceptionally comfortable, but it could not conceal the determination in his eyes. Hiccup. Remember to prioritize selecting tribesmen with deep bonds with dragons when choosing the dragon riders. Great Elder, please rest early. Tomorrow, I will trouble you to coordinate tribal affairs. Stoic nodded, the wooden chair letting out a slight squeak as he stood up. Don't overwork yourself either, research on ley lines cannot be rushed. Hiccup, already unable to contain himself, quickly responded, I'll go notify the partners now, and hurried out of the wooden house, exchanging a cheerful call with Toothless outside. The sound of their footsteps gradually faded away. Lin leaned down and stroked Myra's neck, sending a thought. Let's go to your dragon lair. Okay, Master, Owu. Mira let out a happy, Owu, deliberately softening the movement of its massive body as it followed Lin out of the investigation team base. Burke Island was exceptionally quiet in the night. Starlight filtered through the clouds, clearly outlining the silhouettes of the wooden house and the rock wall. The two walked along the familiar path. After only a few dozen steps, they reached Lin's wooden house. On the rock wall to the right, a spacious cave was clearly visible, which was Myra's dragon lair. The entrance to the dragon lair faced Lin's door and was 5 meters high. The rock wall had been meticulously polished, with smooth, thornless edges. Several glowing fluorite stones were embedded on both sides of the entrance, emitting a soft blue light that illuminated the path without being dazzling. The cave interior was spacious and dry. Faint scratches left by Mira rubbing itself were still visible on the rock walls, exuding a warm, lived-in atmosphere everywhere. After Mira entered the dragon lair, it gently folded its wings and lay down in the center of the cave, its head resting on a pile of hay. Its golden dragon eyes gazed gently at Lin, and a soft, woo-woo, sound came from its throat. Master, come quickly, are we going to cultivate? Owu. Lin smiled and said to Mira as he walked into the dragon lair, No, Mira, I need you to help me research the ley line energy. Lin sat cross-legged on a flat stone block in the center. This spot was directly opposite the cave where the ley line energy surged out, allowing him to perceive the underground energy fluctuations most clearly. He took a deep breath, casting aside the night's coolness and distracting thoughts. He closed his eyes and slowly mobilized the energy within his body. The red and blue energy flowed slowly like an awakening stream along his meridians, spreading from his dantian to his entire body. A warm sensation gradually enveloped him. He could clearly feel that this energy was more condensed and pure than before. Mira, you guide the energy resonance and help me enhance my perception. Lin whispered in his mind. Okay, Master, leave it to me. Mira understood immediately, letting out a low, drawn-out dragon roar that echoed inside the dragon lair. A faint red glow gradually appeared around its body. It was as if magma was slowly flowing beneath its scales, resonating with the red and blue energy within Lin. As the dragon roar grew louder, the air inside the cave seemed to become scorching. Faint strands of light could vaguely be seen rising from the ground, converging along Myra's aura. Lin could clearly feel that the energy within his body, guided by Myra's resonance, was becoming increasingly active. He slowly pushed this energy toward his dantian, and then, following his intent, diffused it throughout his limbs and bones, spreading a dense energy net within his body. It was as if he possessed divine sense, capturing the surrounding ley line fluctuations. The dragon lair was already close to a ley line node, and with the enhancement of Myra's resonance, his perception became extraordinarily clear. At first, it was just a faint warmth transmitted from the stone beneath his feet, seeping into his body through his skin. As his divine sense deepened, the warmth grew stronger, seemingly transforming into rushing streams winding deep beneath the ground. Lin could see that in the cave where Mira was born, the ley line energy in the fissure was like the pulse of the earth. Every fluctuation released magnificent natural energy, spreading through the cracks in the rock strata. A portion first surged toward the valley and dispersed around it, while another portion extended to every corner of Burke Island. I can actually see it, Lin thought with delight, concentrating his intent even further. He tried to push the red and blue energy within his body one step further, making the energy net denser, probing toward the depths of the ley line like a spider web. He wanted to see the source of that energy stream, to know exactly where the ley line extended on Burke Island, and whether it connected to other unknown nodes. But just as his perception touched 3 meters beneath the rock strata, a majestic resistance suddenly appeared. That resistance was not malicious, but it carried an irresistible sense of weight, like hitting an invisible energy barrier. Lin could feel that the energy deep within the ley line was far more turbulent than the surface layer, like a sleeping behemoth. Every pulse emitted awe-inspiring power, but this power also isolated his perception, preventing him from penetrating even an inch further. Unwilling to give up, he gritted his teeth and mobilized more dragon-taming power, attempting to force his perception through this barrier. The energy in his dantian instantly boiled like ignited flames, surging wildly along his meridians toward his limbs. But the harder he pushed, the stronger the rebound force became. It was like punching cotton. Not only could he not break through, but the shock made his divine sense hazy, and fine beads of sweat seeped from his forehead. Ah! Lin groaned, his consciousness momentarily hazy. The energy landscape before his eyes began to blur. The rushing energy streams seemed shrouded in thick fog, their outlines gradually becoming indistinct. He could feel the energy in his body rapidly depleting. The red and blue halo dimmed slightly, and his head felt dizzy, a warning sign of energy overload. Mira noticed his abnormality, and its dragon roar suddenly lowered, carrying a hint of anxiety. The red light around its body intensified. Its massive body leaned slightly forward, and its skull gently rubbed Lin's shoulder, sending a thought. Master, don't push yourself, Owu. It tried to transfer more ley line energy to Lin, wanting to help him stabilize his breath, but as soon as the energy approached the deep rock barrier, it was silently bounced away, failing to provide any assistance. Lin took a deep breath, forcing himself to calm down. He slowly retracted his probing perception, feeling the surging vital energy and slightly stinging meridians within his body. A feeling of frustration arose in his heart. He had still underestimated the ley line energy and overestimated his current strength. Even with increased strength and Myris resonance assistance, his energy intensity and perception were still insufficient to penetrate the obstruction of the deep rock strata. As expected, my strength is still lacking. He opened his eyes, a hint of disappointment in his golden pupils, and gently wiped the sweat from his forehead with his fingertips. The air inside the dragon lair gradually returned to coolness, and the red glow around Mira also subsided slightly. However, its golden dragon eyes were still fixed on him, full of worry. Lin raised his hand and stroked Myra's skull. The warmth of the scales transferred to his fingertips, and the frustration in his heart gradually dissipated. He smiled, responding gently with his thoughts. It's all right, Mira, I was too impatient. The energy deep within the ley line is stronger than we imagined. With my current strength, I can only perceive the surface flow trajectory. To probe the source, I need to improve further. Mira nodded, half understanding, and let out a soft, woo-woo, sound from its throat, nudging his palm with its snout, as if comforting him. Master is already amazing. We'll practice slowly, Owu. It rested its head on the pile of hay beside Lin, its wing gently draped over his back, conveying a warm aura. Lin closed his eyes again, no longer fixated on breaking through the deep barrier. Instead, he calmed his mind and focused on recording the flow trajectory of the surface ley line. He could clearly see that the energy surging from the fissure where Mira was born spread along the valley's rock strata, nourishing the vegetation around the investigation team base. Another portion divided into several small streams, flowing toward the tribe's pastures, farmlands, and even extending to the coastal reef area. The energy fluctuations were particularly noticeable in the places these streams passed, perfectly matching the vibrant scene on the island. Although I can't see the depths, figuring out the surface trajectory is still a significant gain, Lin thought to himself. Tranquility returned to the dragon lair, with only the steady breathing of the man and the dragon, and the subtle hum produced by the flowing ley line energy. Lin leaned against Myra's wing, feeling the warm aura beside him and the energy slowly recovering within his body. A determined light reignited in his golden pupils. He knew that the road to researching ley line energy was long, and the improvement of strength was not achieved overnight. But as long as he had Myra's companionship and a clear goal, he would have the patience to explore step by step. Perhaps when he understood more information about ley line energy, and when his strength advanced another level, he would truly be able to unveil the mysterious veil of ley line energy. The night deepened, and starlight spilled through the gap in the dragon lair entrance, illuminating the figures of the man and the dragon leaning against each other. A week passes quietly amid the bustle on Burke Island. Outside the valley base, the newly built dragon cavalry training field kicks up dust as Hiccup selects young Vikings who are honing flight techniques with their dragon partners. Beneath the tribe, Stoic leads villagers and dragons in carving a new dragon den, where ley line energy seeps through rock fissures, making the surrounding foliage even lusher. Lin has spent most of these days immersed in studying the dragon den's ley line energy. Although he hasn't broken through the deep perception barrier, he has grasped the surface energy flow, yet lately his training cannot breach the barrier, leaving him somewhat regretful. That afternoon, after finishing a round of ley line perception in the dragon den, Lin watches as Mira lies nearby licking her black scales, her golden dragon eyes glowing lazily. A rapid set of footsteps echoes from the base path as a young villager, panting, rushes into the dragon den entrance, excitement on his face. Chieftain. The Great Elder sent me to tell you that a merchant ship has arrived at the port. The captain says it carries many curious items, please see if any are needed. A merchant ship. Lin's eyes brighten as he stands, brushing dust from his clothes. Since the research isn't progressing at all, it might be better to check out the merchant ship. Glancing to the other side of the base, Hiccup is squatting in an open area, applying bright red dye to Toothless's new tail fin. Sunlight bathes the skeletal framework, reflecting a warm glow. Hiccup. Lin calls out loudly, gather the others and come with me to the port to see the merchant ship. Hiccup pauses his work, jerks his head up, his eyes flashing, a merchant ship. Really? He has long heard elders speak of distant merchants daring to cross seas, bringing goods from other tribes and rare curiosities from the outside world. He tosses the dye brush aside, pats Toothless's neck, let's go, Toothless, and see what treasures await. Toothless lets out a cheerful low roar, flapping his freshly dyed red tail fin. The airflow from his wings stirs dust across the ground. The other squad members in the base hurry over at the sound. Astrid, axe in hand, her long hair tied back, eyes scanning sharply and staying on guard. Fishlegs clutching a thick dragon encyclopedia, his lenses sparkling with anticipation, clearly wondering if new dragon-related supplies are present. Snotlout perched on Hookfang's back, hands on hips, shouting loudly so no one ignores him. Roughnut and Toughnut, the twin pair, riding their own dragons, playfully shoving each other with bright laughter. Lin crouches onto Myra's back, gently stroking her smooth scales. Let's go. Going out to play. Rawr. Mira purrs excitedly, unfurling her massive black wings, generating a powerful gust as she soars skyward. Hiccup rides Toothless close behind, the bright red tail fin standing out vividly in the sunlight. Astrid, Fishlegs, and the others mount their dragons in turn, the flock ascending and heading toward the port. Burke Island's coastline stretches below, the deep blue sea lapping against the rocks, white waves rolling endlessly. From a distance, the port's dock indeed teems with villagers. A crowd gathers around a medium-sized wooden ship, its hull draped with faded canvas, the deck piled high with boxes and bundles of all sizes. There really is a merchant ship. Hiccup shouts joyfully from the air. Toothless seems to share his excitement, speeding his wing beats and nearly overtaking Mira. Lin smiles and shakes his head. It's certainly lively. Myra's voice sounds curious. Master, there are so many people down there and lots of strange boxes. Rar Tilda, her golden pupils lock onto the merchant ship below, her wings adjusting slightly as she prepares to land. Toothless darts down first, landing steadily on the open space at the port, his red tail fin flicking proudly twice. Mira follows closely, her massive body giving a slight tremor upon landing, black wings folding to her sides, her golden dragon eyes glancing at Toothless. Toothless, after Myra's stare, instantly becomes obedient, his two green eyes turning square as he looks at Mira. Once she stops glaring, he immediately becomes lively again. The other squad members' dragons also land one after another, lining up neatly beside them, prompting soft murmurs of admiration from the villagers. On the merchant ship's deck, a middle-aged man in a red robe with a curled mustache busily inventories the cargo. He suddenly spots the dragon flock descending, especially the two sleek, jet-black dragons at the front, and turns pale, his limbs going limp. He has heard the legend of Night Fury in countless tribes, the fastest, most dangerous dragon, and never expected to encounter two at once. Help! Help! A Night Fury! Merchant John screams, scrambling and rolling behind a stack of crates, clutching his head with both hands, trembling all over. The villagers, startled by his shout, look up. Upon seeing the newcomer, smiles of delight spread across their faces as they call out, "It's the chieftain! Lin the chieftain has arrived!" And Hiccup and the dragon riders. Lin leaps down from Myra's back, hurrying toward the merchant ship, the investigation squad following close behind. The villagers instinctively step aside to both sides, clearing a path to the ship. Wow! This merchant ship looks packed with good stuff. Roughnut clings to the rail, peering in, and Toughnut immediately rushes over, reaching for a wooden crate studded with copper nails, only to be stopped by Astrid. Don't touch anything until it's safe. Astrid's gaze sweeps over the ship's repair marks, her brow furrowing slightly. This vessel has weathered many storms. Fishlegs, clutching the encyclopedia, edges to the deck's edge, his eyes suddenly brightening as he points at a stone and sea snail in a crate corner. Look. The texture of this stone is so odd. It's neither pebble nor volcanic rock. I've never seen anything like it. Snotlout slaps Hookfang's neck, sneering, what stone is that? If there's anything that can make Hookfang's fire stronger, I could fetch a high price. Hookfang seems to understand, emitting a loud low roar and spitting a small burst of sparks. Hiccup walks over to Lin, patting his shoulder. I didn't expect merchants to still come here. There used to be many, but I'm not sure what happened. Now they're almost gone. Lin nods, his gaze landing on the merchant hidden behind the cargo, his steps slowing as he says gently, hello, don't be afraid, they won't hurt you. If you don't believe me, get up and see for yourself. John, crouched behind a crate, freezes, hesitating to move. The stacked crates on the deck rise high, faintly revealing fabrics, metal tools, and some unidentified dried plant goods. Mira and Toothless stood side by side beside Lin. Myra's golden eyes curiously surveyed the merchant, while Toothless tilted its head, snuffled around the cargo pile, and gently pawed at a piece of cloth. Toothless pressed its snout forward and gave a light sniff, letting out a low rumble as if sensing something amiss. Seeing this, Mira also leaned in, her black snout brushing the fabric, her golden dragon eyes narrowed slightly, and a thought instantly entered Lin's mind. Master, there's a strange scent beneath this cloth, roared Tilda. Lin felt a stir in his heart, casually glanced at the cloth, and his fingertips subconsciously brushed his palm. At that moment, Johann, who had been behind a wooden crate, slowly raised his head, revealing eyes rimmed with blood vessels. He quickly scanned Mira and Toothless, seeing the two dragons merely curiously observing him with no intent to attack. His tense shoulders relaxed a bit, though his hands still clutched the crate's edge, his voice trembling. This is the first time I've seen dragons that don't attack people. His gaze fell on Lin and Hiccup, then swept over the squad members riding dragons behind them. His pupils narrowed sharply. Just now, I think I saw you riding them over. You're dragon riders. Exactly. Lin nodded, his tone growing warmer, raising his hand to signal Toothless to step back a half step, giving Johann enough reassurance. We're partners with the dragons, they won't harm innocent people. We're here just to see if your merchant ship has anything we need to buy, don't worry. Upon hearing the words, buy something, Johann's eyes lit up. Then Johann stared at Toothless obediently stepping back, glanced at Stormfly, who was calmly lowering her head beside Astrid, and his taut nerves finally eased considerably as he slowly crawled out from behind the crate. He brushed dust off himself, his gaze scanning the cargo piles on the deck, hesitantly saying, my ship carries a lot of fine goods, collected from various tribes, tools forged from refined iron, assorted spices, and some rare ores. Rare items. Lin suddenly recalled that Burke Island currently only has fisheries and livestock, with few vegetables or fruits, so he cut him off, eyes hopeful. Do you have vegetable or fruit seeds? Our island lacks them, and if you do, I'm willing to pay a high price. Seeds. Johan's eyes brightened, and he quickly nodded. Yes. Yes. I've traded for many from the southern tribe, tomato, carrot, and even some berry seeds that grow in cold climates. I thought no one wanted them, but. Really? Hiccup immediately leaned in, his face alight with excitement. That's great. We've never had those on our island. Roughnut and Toughnut burst into cheers, crowding Johann with questions. Will the seeds grow sweet fruit? How long until they sprout? Lin, his face showing excitement, told Johann. First, bring out the vegetables and seeds so we can see them. The price is negotiable. Johann nodded, turned to rummage through the cargo pile, but his steps suddenly halted. His gaze drifted to the piece of cloth Toothless had pawed earlier, his complexion shifting slightly. He hurried toward the hold. I'll get it right away, just wait a moment. Lin caught the flash of his movement, and recalling Myra's earlier thought, his brows subtly furrowed. Johann hauled out a bulging coarse burlap sack from the hold, its surface specked with fine dirt, clearly long stored. He hurried to Lin, brushed dust off the sack, and flashed a shrewd grin. Aha! Found it. Look, this is it. As he spoke, he yanked the sack's knot open and tipped it over. Various seeds tumbled out in small amounts. Red tomato seeds, brown tan carrot seeds, and some round, deep purple berry seeds, plump, exuding a faint earthy aroma, instantly recognizable as carefully selected. These are real treasures. Johann lowered his voice, brimming with pride. I went out to the sea and bargained with the southern tribe's elder chieftain for half a day to get these seeds. They're perfect for Burke Island's climate. Lin lifted a few berry seeds, feeling their warm, plump texture without any mold, then carefully inspected the sack's depths, confirming no weed seeds or rotten ones. Satisfied, he nodded. Good, the seeds are intact. He turned to the villagers behind him, instructing them to bring enough beast hides and polished ore, Burke Island's current standard trade goods. Johann, seeing Lin's enthusiasm, smiled a narrow grin, quickly taking the supplies the villagers handed over, storing them carefully while muttering, rest assured, plant these seeds and they'll sprout within 3 months, then you'll have fresh produce to eat. Just then, a crisp, whoosh, crack rang out, shattering the lively atmosphere. Everyone turned toward the sound, only to see Toothless had somehow returned to the cargo pile, evidently fascinated by the cloth's scent. It clutched the cloth's corner with its paws, jerked its head back, and the dark coarse burlap ripped away from the pile in an instant. The burlap fluttered as Toothless tore it, revealing an iron cage about 1.5 feet tall beneath. Inside the cage curled a fluffy mass of feathers, its base a soft ivory and the edges tinged with pale yellow. At first glance it looked just like a pile of down feathers that had fallen among the cargo. When Toothless's tug was too strong, the feather quivered, then with a plop, a fist-sized, speckled egg rolled out from its belly onto the dry straw inside the cage. What is this? Hiccup was the first to exclaim, while Toothless tilted its head, its green eyes wide, reaching a paw toward the cage, only to be brushed aside by Myra's tail. Roughnut and Toughnut immediately squeezed to the cage edge, tiptoeing inside. Is it a bird? Why doesn't it have wings? And it laid such a huge egg. Can the egg be eaten? It looks so plump. Astrid frowned, reaching out to stop the twins from poking the cage. Don't scare it, it looks timid. Her gaze fell on the freshly laid egg, then swept over the worn marks on the cage. This cage is of the dragon hunter's design, with chain marks on it. Fishlegs, clutching a dragon compendium, flipped through it rapidly, the pages rustling loudly, and finally shut it in frustration. Nothing. No record at all. It's neither a known seabird nor any dragon hatchling. Its feather density and egg pattern are unprecedented. Snotlout crossed his arms and let out a snort, but couldn't help stepping forward for a quick look. What a weird thing, such a timid creature, scared into laying an egg. Hookfang, look how useless it is. Hookfang spat a small burst of sparks, as if agreeing, but the creature in the cage shrank suddenly, its feathers trembling even more, its whole body curling into a ball like a fluff. Lin watched the familiar scene, his mouth twitching, and silently withdrew his hand that had been resting on his forehead. Maru bird, a common, mobile egg depot, in the monster hunter world, as timid as a mouse. When startled it will stress lay an egg and flee. Its meat is tender and its eggs are nutritious, making it a great food supplement, especially since Myra's appetite has been growing lately, and Burke Island's fishing and hunting yields are struggling to keep up with her consumption. He didn't immediately reveal the creature's name, since Johann was nearby and there was no need to expose his secret. He calmly walked to the cage, his gaze landing on the trembling Maru bird. It does seem to be a rare creature, extremely timid. Sure enough, Johann showed no sign of panic. Instead, a flash of concern and reluctance crossed his face. He rushed to the cage, shielding it, glared at Toothless, then turned to Lin, a shrewd smile spreading. Everyone, don't worry. This is a treasure I kept especially for you. Treasure. Hiccup raised an eyebrow. Do you know what this is? I don't know the exact name, but it's definitely rare. Johann patted the cage, his tone brimming with pride. I was planning to ship it to the Viking Alliance. The nobles there love collecting such uncommon curiosities. Its fluffy appearance, plus the quirky trait of laying an egg when frightened, will surely fetch a high price. Lin understood instantly. No wonder Johann's face changed when the cloth was ripped. He wasn't scared, just worried that this high-value treasure might be exposed too early. He stepped forward, his gaze on the ball-shaped Maru bird in the cage. Johann, where did you find this creature? Johann's eyes flicked around, his tone becoming vague. I picked it up near an island to the east. I came across an unmanned dragon hunter's ship. This thing was locked in the hold. Seeing its rarity, I just took it back. A dragon hunter's ship. Lin's eyes lit up, probing further. Which direction east exactly? What's the island like? About a 7-day sail eastward. Johann tried to recall. The island is fairly large, with a central mountain range and dense forest. I didn't dare get too close, just grabbed the cage and left. The dragon hunter's ship looked as if it had been attacked. Its hull bore claw marks and the deck still had dried blood. Lin noted the location in his mind, the dragon hunter's derelict ship, a forested island with a mountain range, and this captive Maru bird, feeling it wasn't a coincidence. Lin turned to Johann, his tone calm. We'll buy this creature. Name your price, and I'll trade you refined iron. Refined iron. Johann's eyes lit up instantly. Refined iron is hard currency among the tribes, far more valuable than beast skins or ore. He rubbed his hands, calculating shrewdly. You're Lin, right? Great. If this treasure makes it to the Viking Alliance, it could fetch at least 10 pieces of refined iron. 8 pieces. Lin replied unhurriedly. It's extremely timid. Long-distance transport risks its death. You might not be able to sell it to the Alliance, and the dragon hunter's whereabouts are unpredictable. Carrying it is a liability. 8 pieces of refined iron. Right now, I can give you. Johann hesitated a few seconds, quickly weighing the options. 8 pieces of refined iron wasn't trivial. He then realized the fluff ball was a hot potato. If a dragon hunter showed up, his life would be at risk. He nodded immediately. Deal. 8 pieces, that's 8. Lin gave a brief order to the villagers behind him. They swiftly fetched 8 polished, uniform pieces of refined iron and handed them to Johann. Johann hefted the heavy refined iron, grinning ear to ear, and hurriedly stuffed the iron into a box, locking it as if fearing Lin might change his mind. Carefully lower the cage, take it to the forest behind the hill, give it clean grass, insects, and fresh water, and don't startle it. Lin reminded the villagers again. The villagers promptly obeyed, lifting the cage gingerly. The Maru bird inside shifted, then quietly poked its head out, darted a quick glance at Mira, and immediately retreated back. Mira padded up to the cage, her golden eyes curiously examined the fluff ball inside. A thought entered Lin's mind. Master, this little thing is so soft, it smells, a bit fragrant, woofed Tilda. Don't get any ideas about it, Lin replied in his mind. From now on it'll be our source of egg food, so keep a good watch over it. Mira let out a low hum, half understanding, obediently watching the villagers carrying the cage, occasionally glancing at the Maru bird inside. Seeing everything go smoothly, Johann flattered with a smile. If you need anything else, I'll bring it next time. I'll set off now, won't disturb you further. Lin nodded, and after everyone finished their transactions, watched Johann hurriedly pack up his goods and set sail. The merchant ship gradually left the harbor, heading into the distance. Hiccup walked to Lin's side, watching the ship's silhouette, and asked puzzled, how did a dragon hunter's ship end up on an island east of here? It's so close to Burke Island, and that island, could it be dangerous? Hard to say. Lin gazed at the eastern horizon, his eyes heavy. Dragon hunters never give up easily, and that island's location sits right on the edge of the uncharted sea we plan to explore. He turned to his squad members. Once we've dealt with this creature, we'll make preparations and set out for that island tomorrow. First, to uncover why the dragon hunters vanished. Second, perhaps we'll find more useful resources. Toothless seemed to understand the word, depart, opening his huge mouth, letting out an excited low roar, swishing his tail fin as he spun around in place. Toothless turned too sharply. His red tail fin, like a swift slash of scarlet silk, whop, struck Hiccup's lower leg. Hiccup staggered, collapsing onto the ground, half laughing, half crying as he rubbed his leg. Light chuckles from the scouting team echoed around. Lin watched the scene, a faint smile flickering in his eyes, his mouth curving slightly upward. Toothless froze for a moment, glancing at Hiccup on the ground, then turned his gaze to Lin. His green eyes were full of bewilderment, then he opened his huge mouth, flashing sharp teeth, letting out an excited low roar while wagging his tail, like a mischievous youngster unaware of the trouble he caused. Mira also shuffled over, her golden eyes curving into a gentle arc, a low gurgle resonating from her throat, her thoughts brimming with amusement. Master, Toothless is so clumsy, woofed Tilda. Her black wings lightly tapped Toothless's head, both teasing and soothing. Toothless wasn't annoyed at all. Instead, he nudged Myra's wing, laughing even more, his tail sweeping dust into the air. Lin raised his hand, rubbing his brow, helpless yet indulgent. The heavy atmosphere that had settled over the port because of the unknown island was quietly lightened by the two dragons' clumsiness, leaving only a brief moment of relaxation under the setting sun. He gazed toward the eastern horizon, golden light spilling across his face. The smile in his eyes gradually faded, leaving only a solemn focus on tomorrow's expedition. The setting sun slowly sank into the sea, its orange-red afterglow spilling across the water, the shimmering ripples dancing like scattered gold, dyeing the sky and earth in warm golden-red hues. The merchant ship's shadow gradually shrunk into a small black dot in the golden light, disappearing on the eastern horizon. Lin tightly hugged a 30-centimeter-long maru bird egg, its light brown speckled shell warm and heavy. He subconsciously tightened his arms, afraid of it breaking during flight. Flipping onto Myra's back, his palm gently stroked her smooth black scales. Lin whispered, "Let's go, back to the valley." The investigation team members were still frolicking with Hiccup at the harbor, the evening breeze carrying the salty scent of the sea and the fresh fragrance of vegetation past his ears. "Ooh Tilda," Mira let out an excited low growl, her golden dragon eyes shining like stars in the twilight. Her gaze frequently darted towards the egg, her thoughts filled with urgency. "Master, will the egg fall? I'll fly a little slower." She spread her giant wings, creating a gentle airflow, not soaring rapidly as usual, but gliding several meters above the sea before slowly gaining altitude, flying towards the valley base. Mira flew with extreme caution, her golden pupils constantly monitoring the movements on her back. "Don't worry, it won't fall," Lin replied mentally, gently scratching her neck. "You're flying very steadily." Mira seemed pleased by the praise, flapping her wings more powerfully, yet still maintaining a steady flight. Moonlight pierced through the clouds, gilding her black scales with silver light, her flight path tracing a gentle arc across the night sky. The village below gradually receded, its lights twinkling like stars, and the outline of the valley base became increasingly clear in the night. Landing on the valley plateau, Mira deliberately reduced her descent speed. Even with a gentle landing, the heavy sound of her dragon claws touching the ground could be heard. Lin carefully dismounted, the egg still intact and faintly warm. "You worked hard," he patted Myra's leg and walked towards the woodpile. Mira stayed close, her golden dragon eyes fixed on the egg, letting out a low whimper, her thoughts full of anticipation. "Master, are we roasting the egg now?" "Ooh." She gently nudged Lin's arm with her head, her sharp claws neatly retracted, afraid of touching the egg. Lin nodded, picking up pine branches and deadwood to build a bonfire. Flint struck, sparks flew, igniting the pine needles. Orange-red flames crackled to life, illuminating Myra's face, the dancing flames reflected in her golden eyes. Lin placed the egg in the center of the bonfire, then took out a basket of fresh sea fish, skewered them with sharpened hardwood sticks, and evenly propped them in the soil around the bonfire, forming a fish wall of dozens of fish. The flames licked the fish skin, quickly sizzling, golden fat dripping and sparking tiny tongues of fire. The aroma of fish mixed with the fresh scent of pine wood permeated the valley. Mira lay by the bonfire, her front paws together, head resting on her paws, eyes unblinking, staring at the egg. Her tail gently swept the ground, occasionally twitching impatiently, yet she remained quiet, her thoughts repeatedly urging, "Master, is the egg cooked yet? It smells even better." Her nose twitched constantly, greedily sniffing the aroma. Lin raised his hand and stroked her head, her scales warm and smooth. "Wait a little longer, it should taste even better when cooked." He lightly tapped the eggshell with a thin wooden stick. The dull thump thump indicated it still needed roasting. The bonfire's glow gradually warmed, lengthening their shadows. The fish skin roasted to a deep golden brown, edges slightly curled, the savory aroma growing richer, causing Myra's whimpers to grow louder. A quarter of an hour later, Lin tapped the eggshell again. The sound was crisp, the eggshell edges were slightly browned, and steam seeped from tiny cracks, carrying a richer, more savory aroma than ordinary bird eggs. "It's ready to eat." He blew on the hot eggshell and offered it to Mira. Myra's eyes instantly gleamed astonishingly bright. She lowered her head and nudged the eggshell with her nose, then took a gentle bite. With a crunch, the eggshell cracked in a neat seam, and the thick liquid inside oozed out, a savory aroma mixed with a fresh, salty scent spreading through the air. "Wow! So delicious." Myra's thoughts were filled with shock, her golden eyes sparkling with satisfaction. She stretched out her tongue and licked greedily, a joyful, gurgle, sound coming from her throat. The egg liquid was smooth and rich, with the unique sweetness of a maru bird egg. Mira ate with extreme eagerness, devouring the remaining half in another bite, leaving not even a crumb. After eating, she let out a burp, then suddenly froze, her wings drooping, head lowered, her golden eyes full of grievance and self-reproach. "Master. I'm sorry. Ooh." Her thoughts were tearful, "It was too delicious, I forgot to save some for you." She gently nudged Lin's arm with her head, her movements careful, her tail drooping listlessly on the ground, looking like she had done something wrong. Lin looked at her clumsy antics and couldn't help but laugh, raising a hand to rub her head. "It's okay, it was meant for you anyway." He took down the most fragrant roasted fish and offered it to her. "We still have roasted fish, and maru birds will lay many eggs in the future, we'll have plenty of chances to eat together." Myra's eyes lit up. She awkwardly took the roasted fish and swallowed it whole. The crispy outside and tender inside of the fish, with the smoky aroma of charcoal and the salty freshness of the sea, she ate dozens of them before she was full. She leaned her head closer to Lin, almost enveloping him in her embrace, full of dependence. Lin also picked up a roasted fish and ate it slowly. The crispy outside and tender inside of the fish were juicy, and paired with the cool evening breeze, it was especially pleasant. After they finished eating, Lin added some firewood, keeping the bonfire's light soft. Lin leaned against Mira, contemplating the ley line energy, and gradually fell asleep. Seeing this, Mira curled up, gently covering Lin with her wings. Her slow breathing stirred the remaining embers of the bonfire. The sea breeze, carrying a salty, damp scent, swept past the dragon's wings, and Burke Island's outline finally shrunk into a faint shadow on the horizon. Lin lay on Myra's smooth black scales, his gaze sweeping over his companions flying alongside him. He said, "According to the merchant Johann, it'll take another 2 days to fly to that eastern island. Hiccup, check the map, are there any suitable resting points along the way?" Hiccup immediately pulled out a curled parchment map from his backpack. Toothless curiously poked his head closer, his warm breath gently rustling the map. Hiccup's fingertip traced the yellowed paper, soon stopping at a location marked with a small cove. "There's a Crescent Bay here. It's sheltered from wind and waves by cliffs, and Dad mentioned there's a freshwater stream, just enough for us to rest for a night." Night deepened, and the silver moon climbed into the night sky, casting down its clear light. When the outline of Crescent Bay appeared in their sight, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. The bay was shaped like a crescent moon, with steep cliffs on both sides blocking the surging waves. The bay's surface was calm as a mirror, reflecting the myriad stars. Mira landed first, her dragon claws making a slight rustling sound as they touched the sand. As her giant wings folded, they created a gust of evening wind, causing the reeds on the shore to sway gently. Lin jumped off her back, stretching his stiff limbs. Mira immediately came over, gently nudging his arm with her head, her thoughts conveying tiredness. Master, it's so comfortable here. He smiled and instructed, everyone, first find fresh water to replenish, then gather some dry branches to make a fire. We'll rest here tonight. Lin jumped off the ridge, stretched his stiff limbs, and Mira immediately came over, her head gently rubbing his arm, her thoughts weary. Ibo, this feels so comfortable. He smiled and ordered, everyone, first find fresh water, then gather dry branches for a fire. We'll rest here tonight. The team members went their separate ways. Hiccup and Toothless fetched water at the creek, while the others collected dry branches. The campfire quickly flared up, its orange-red flames lighting the beach and stretching everyone's shadows long. Lin leaned against Myra's curled body, the black dragon obediently resting its wing on his shoulder, shielding him from the night's chill. He gazed at the dancing flames, his thoughts drifting involuntarily to the unknown island, the forest, mountains, and dragon hunter's airship described by Johann, which always gave him a vague sense of unease. Ibo, what are you thinking? Myra's thoughts interrupted his, her golden dragon eyes full of concern. Nothing, Lin said, rubbing the top of its head, just pondering what we might encounter on the island. Mira let out a low hum, gently nudging his cheek with her head. As long as I'm here, I won't let you get hurt. As night deepened, the fire waned, and most of the team fell asleep leaning against the dragons, while only the sound of waves lapping the beach gently echoed through the bay. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away on the eastern island, the night was as black as ink. Dozens of dark silhouettes darted swiftly through the forest, their light steps carrying a murderous aura. Leading them was a burly man, a fierce scar running from his shoulder down his chest to his abdomen. Captain Bath, the dragon hunter's commander. He lowered his voice, his tone greedy, everyone be careful. If this plan succeeds, there'll be endless riches, enough for us to live happily forever. Don't worry, Captain Bath. We'll never turn down money. Dozens of low responses echoed through the trees, faint glints of metal armor reflecting cold light, and the subtle clink of weapons colliding. Bath raised his hand to signal everyone to halt, waved toward the rear, and 10 dragon hunters immediately emerged carrying 5 iron cages, each draped with black cloth, faint sounds audible from within. Bath stepped forward, ripped off the black cloth, revealing the curled creatures inside, a collection of marubirds with their mouths bound, their off-white feathers dust-covered and trembling. Little darlings, whether we succeed now depends on you. Bath stared at the marubirds in the cage, his gaze cold. Take them to the deep mountains and follow the plan. The 10 dragon hunters nodded, shouldering the cages into the dense forest, heading toward the island's central mountains, their figures quickly swallowed by the thick trees. Bath led the rest up a sloping ridge, pulling out a brass telescope and aiming it toward the deep mountains. Through the telescope, massive silhouettes loomed among the trees, occasional blue arcs of electricity flashing in the night, illuminating the surrounding foliage. Bath's gaze finally settled on the entrance of a cave, a slightly smaller hatchling curled on the ground, guarded by a single adult, evidently its mother. Soon after, a series of boom thuds echoed from the deep mountains as stones struck iron cages. The marubirds, their mouths unbound, were startled and burst from the cages, emitting sharp cries as they fled in all directions. The dragon hunters carrying the cages, seeing this, immediately turned back the way they came to regroup with Bath. Here they come. Bath gripped the telescope, his voice low. Soon, deafening roars erupted from the mountains, sounding like wolves and dragons, brimming with ferocious rage. Through the telescope, several figures surrounded by blue arcs surged upward, chasing the marubird scent, leaving only the mother of the hatchling, standing by its offspring. The chance is here. Bath's eyes flashed with ruthlessness as he swung his right arm. Charge. Show me your true skill. Dozens of dragon hunters immediately drew their weapons, shields forward, axes and longswords in hand, and a few raised specially made crossbow bolts, each tipped with a tiny oil pouch. They crept silently toward the cave, their steps feather-light, fearing to disturb the adult monster. Within 100 meters of the cave, Bath raised his hand to halt everyone. First, attack with crossbows. He whispered, aim true, don't give it a chance to react. A dozen crossbowmen quickly knocked arrows, aiming at the adult monster outside the cave. Baff gave the order, fire. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, a dozen bolts sliced through the air, striking the sleeping monster's body with pinpoint accuracy. The oil pouches on the tips burst instantly, and a boom of flame erupted, engulfing the monster's body. The monster, jolted awake by intense pain, leapt to its feet, emitting a deafening roar. It stood 5 meters tall, its body stretching 17 meters long, a yellow, hard carapace covering it entirely. The shells on its back and limbs were especially thick, a pair of spiraled horns atop its head glowed with a cold light, and sharp spikes sprouted from its jaw. Between the carapace plates, dense white fur peeked through, and blue arcs of electricity crackled intermittently over its body, giving the creature a striking blend of power and agile beauty. Flames seared its skin, the monster fully enraged, disregarding the fire on its body as it charged straight at the dragon hunters. It swiped a massive paw, the force staggering, sending a dragon hunter flying into a tree trunk, where he collapsed unconscious. Surround it. Baff roared, leading a dozen men toward the cave, the net in his hand aimed at the constantly snarling hatchling. Capture the hatchling, and it won't dare resist. Baff hurled the net forcefully, a massive hemp rope net unfurling instantly, trapping the hatchling securely. The hatchling let out a terrified scream, struggling to break free, but the net tightened around it. The adult monster, seeing this, flashed extreme fury in its eyes, its crimson pupils fixed on the net-trapped, whimpering hatchling. Blue arcs of electricity surged to their peak, crackling like living snakes, ionizing the surrounding air into a sharp, burnt smell. The flames on its body were whipped up by the raging airflow, sparks scattering, yet they could not conceal the raging fury swirling in its eyes. Roar. Suddenly, the monster threw its massive head toward the night sky, a thunderous roar exploding from its chest, a sound as low as thunder rolling across the wasteland, yet razor-sharp, as if pouring out all its pain, anger, and despair. The roar pierced the dense forest, shaking branches loose, while distant mountains echoed the sound for a long time. Deep in the woods, the dark silhouettes that had been chasing the marubirds suddenly halted. The ear-splitting roar coming from the nest direction cut through the thicket, bearing searing fury like a hammer striking their hearts. It was a call from the nest, an alarm that the young were in danger. The monsters, which had been scattering to chase prey, instantly turned around, their blue arcs flaring around them, and crackling currents sliced through the night. They no longer cared about the fleeing marubirds, they stomped their limbs, their massive bodies stirring up gusts in the forest as they raced toward the nest. Heavy hooves pounded the ground, shaking dead branches and leaves into rustling, while the shrubs along the way were battered into splintered limbs, and the trees swayed incessantly. Roar. Howl. Responses roared back and forth, echoing from all corners of the forest with savage fury, growing nearer and clearer. The sound was like 10,000 thunderclaps converging, making the whole forest tremble, and even the air seemed to warp from the shock. Baff stared at the cub trapped in the net, a greedy grin just forming on his face, when a sudden barrage of roars reached his ears, turning his complexion pale. He jerked his head toward the forest depths, pupils narrowing. It was a signal that more monsters were returning. They're back. Baff cursed fiercely, his greed replaced by burning urgency, his tone sharp and rapid. Listen up. 15 of you, shield in one hand, axe in the other, form a circle to trap this mother. If she charges, net her. The rest immediately bind the cub and carry it away. Anyone who hesitates, I'll cut them down first. The moment the order was given, 15 dragon hunters instantly spread out, forming a tight encirclement. They held heavy iron shields in their left hands, the shield faces outward forming a semicircular wall, while their right hands gripped icy, gleaming axes, the blades shimmering coldly in the night. The remaining dragon hunters swiftly bound the capture net with rope, 4 per team hoisting a wooden pole to lift the constantly whimpering cub. The creature's terrified cries were muffled by the heavy hemp rope and net, reduced to muted whimpers. The adult monster, already enraged by the flames searing it, saw the dragon hunters trying to carry away the cub and quickly vanished into the dense forest, the crimson in its eyes nearly solidifying. The blue arcs around its body surged severalfold in an instant, crackling currents racing along its shell and fur, the deafening electric hiss ionizing the surrounding air into a sharp, burnt smell. It slammed its limbs down, the massive body charging straight at the party lifting the cub, its claws whistling as they tore the air, intent on snatching the child. Throw the net. Stop it. The holding dragon hunter's captain roared, being the first to fling his capture net. 3 hemp nets fitted with barbs unfurled instantly in the air, like a giant hunting spider, precisely covering the monster's limbs. The monster reacted swiftly, sidestepping, yet one net still ensnared its hind leg. The barbs on the rope dug deep into the shell's cracks. It strained with a sudden burst, a snap, as several ropes tore, yet most of the net remained wrapped around its leg, hampering its movement. Seizing the opening, the dragon hunters immediately tightened the encirclement. Shields clanged together, forming an airtight shield wall, while axes swung in unison at the monster's limbs and torso. Clang clang clang. The axe blades struck the yellow shell, producing coarse, gritty impacts that left only shallow white marks, yet still firmly restrained its movements. The monster roared, its tail sweeping out and slamming heavily against one side of the iron shield wall. The shield bearer was jolted so hard his palm split open, blood trickling down the shield's edge, yet he gritted his teeth, refusing to retreat, and swung his axe back at the monster's tail base. The monster winced in pain, snapping its head back. Its spiraled horn lunged toward the nearest dragon hunter, only to be firmly blocked by the opponent's shield. The horn pierced the shield surface but became lodged between wood and iron, unable to be pulled out immediately. Wrap it. Throw another net. The captain roared, and 2 more nets flew out, one ensnaring the monster's forelimb, the other covering its neck. The ropes tightened, the barbs digging deep into the scales. Gaps. The monster let out a heart-piercing roar as its blue arcs surged, the electric currents instantly slicing through the hemp of both nets, but the effort drained a great deal of its strength. It broke free of the restraints, charging again toward the cub, but the dragon hunter's circle was like a festering wound, holding it tightly. Shields blocked its claws and horn, axes swung intermittently, forcing it to turn and counterattack. Whenever it tore a small gap, a dragon hunter would immediately fill it, flinging a spare net to either bind its limbs or trip its steps, giving it no chance to pursue the cub. The flames died down, but within the monster's shell cracks, the white fur had turned charred, mingling with the burnt scent of the electric arcs. Its movements grew increasingly sluggish, deep axe marks scarred its shell, yet the resolve to protect its offspring burned hotter, each charge carrying a ferocious, all-or-nothing force. The dragon hunters were also suffering. 3 had been flung aside by the monster's claws, 2 were convulsed and knocked down by electric arcs, and the remaining members were all wounded. The shields were riddled with cracks, several axes had their blades rolled, yet thanks to their numbers and coordinated teamwork, they kept the monster firmly restrained. They dared not relax. If this mother broke free, not only the team carrying the cub would be doomed, but they themselves would surely die. Run. Don't look back. Baff glanced back at the stalemate, his eyes showing no mercy, only a frenzy for wealth. The party carrying the cub retreated quickly down the slope, the heavy footfalls and the cub's whimper fading away, while the battle within the circle grew ever more intense. The monster's roars, the clatter of shields, the slash of axes, and the crackle of electricity intertwined, echoing through the pitch-black forest. It repeatedly broke through the shield wall, only to be driven back each time by the dragon hunter's nets and axes. Blue arcs and red flames intertwined, illuminating both sides' ferocious faces, plunging them into an endless, deadly stalemate. Run. Don't look back. Baff urged the cub-carrying party, his gaze no longer catching the battle, his eyes showing no mercy, only a greed for riches. They fled down the slope in haste, the dragon hunters bearing the cub stumbling, unable to pause, while behind them the forest's distant roars, clashing weapons, and cries intertwined like a death-calling incantation. The shield wall had long since shattered, leaving fewer than 5 dragon hunters, each drenched in blood, their armor in tatters. One had an arm broken, leaning against a tree trunk for support, another's leg was scorched by electric arcs, skin blackened and blistered, each step causing a painful stumble. The iron shields they clutched were riddled with spider web cracks, and several axes had their blades rolled like saw teeth, no longer delivering their former force. Facing the still ferocious monster, the dragon hunter's resolve had long been replaced by bone-deep fear.